Triple H and Roman Reigns pay heartfelt tribute to Hulk Hogan. The wrestling world stands still as one of its greatest icons is gone. WWE superstars Triple H and Roman Reigns deliver powerful tributes after the devastating loss of Hulk Hogan, who passed away at the age of 71 due to cardiac arrest. In this emotional video, we revisit the legacy of the Immortal One and witness how the wrestling community, fans, and legends alike, are remembering the man who changed sports entertainment forever. Wrestling world shocked as WWE icon Hulk Hogan passes away at 71 from cardiac arrest. Triple H and Roman Reigns pay heartfelt tribute to the man who defined wrestling for generations. This emotional moment reminds us just how deeply Hogan's legacy runs in WWE history. The wrestling world has gone silent. Not because of a storyline. Not because of a championship upset. But because one of the most iconic voices to ever echo through an arena has gone forever silent. Hulk Hogan, born Terry Bollea, has passed away at the age of 71. According to official reports, the cause was cardiac arrest. And while the man may be gone, the legend, the Immortal One, lives on in the hearts of millions. For those who grew up watching him rip his shirt apart on national television, dropping that legendary leg drop, and pointing a finger to the heavens as Real American blasted through the speakers, this isn't just a loss. This is heartbreak. This is history, coming to a still, sobering halt. From the moment the news broke, tributes began flooding in from across the globe. But two stood out. Two that reminded us just how deep Hogan's fingerprints are etched into WWE's very foundation. Roman Reigns. Triple H. The faces of modern wrestling, standing still in the wake of the man who helped shape the ring they now command. In their words, and in their silence, we were reminded, Hulk Hogan wasn't just a performer. He was the blueprint. And without him, there might never have been a WrestleMania. Never a WWE as we know it, but before the world mourned him, it celebrated him. Terry Bollea was never supposed to be Hulk Hogan. A young man from Augusta, Georgia, he played bass guitar in rock bands and worked odd jobs before discovering wrestling in the 1970s. He trained under Hiro Matsuda, a trainer infamous for breaking his students on day one. And true to legend, Hogan had his leg broken on his first day in the ring. But he came back. That was always the story of Hulk Hogan, comebacks. From obscurity to icon, from injury to immortality. By the early 1980s, Vince McMahon saw something in the towering blonde with the 24-inch pythons. Hogan wasn't just a wrestler. He was a spectacle. A superhero in red and yellow. And when the first WrestleMania came around in 1985, it was Hogan in the main event. Hogan who carried the weight of an untested experiment, sports entertainment. The result? Magic. Millions watched. Pay-per-view records were set. The birth of Hulkamania wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a cultural moment. He became more than a wrestler. He became a household name. Saturday morning cartoons. Action figures. Cereal boxes. Movies like Suburban Commando and No Holds Barred. There was no part of American pop culture that Hulk Hogan didn't touch. And fans didn't just cheer for him, they lived by his words. Train, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and believe in yourself. For a generation of kids, that wasn't just a gimmick, it was gospel. Yet for all his glory, Hogan's career wasn't without its battles. The 90s ushered in a new chapter. In WCW, Hogan turned heel for the first time, forming the New World Order with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. It was a daring, brilliant reinvention. And once again, Hogan was at the center of another wrestling revolution. From the Golden Age to the Attitude Era, from red and yellow to black and white, Hogan adapted, evolved, survived. That's what legends do, but time, as it always does, began to catch up. The leg drops that once shook the canvas now strained his spine. The entrances that electrified arenas began to slow. Yet even when his matches became fewer, Hogan remained ever present. WWE Hall of Fame inductions. Special appearances. Cameos during WrestleMania. Every time he walked out, the crowd would erupt. Not for what he was now, but for what he symbolized. A bridge between generations. So when the news of his passing spread, it wasn't just the fans who paused. It was the entire industry. And at the front of that emotional tide were two men, Roman Reigns and Triple H. Triple H, the student of the game, the executive who now helps shape WWE's future, posted a message that broke even the toughest hearts. Without Hulk Hogan, none of this exists. He paved the road with sweat, charisma, and an unmatched work ethic. Today, the world lost a legend. But we gained a legacy that will never fade. And Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the man whose presence now defines the ring, offered few words but immense weight. Respect to the man who defined greatness. Hulk, you showed us what it meant to carry the weight of the world on your back and still smile. Rest easy, brother. Simple. Powerful. Real. Across social media, other legends chimed in. John Cena called Hogan his childhood hero. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said, "You opened the door. You lit the path. And you passed us the torch with grace." Even Ric Flair, himself no stranger to the highs and lows of wrestling immortality, shared a tearful video, barely able to hold back emotion. "We shared rings, rivalries, and respect. I can't believe I'm saying goodbye to you." At the WWE Performance Center, the flags flew at half-mast. The locker room, often filled with energy and bravado, was still. Superstars gathered around TVs, rewatching Hogan's old matches. A tribute montage played on the Titantron in every training room. And perhaps most poignantly, a single red and yellow feather boa hung quietly over the entrance ramp. No music, no pyro, just a silent nod to a man who once made that walk feel like a rock concert. What made Hulk Hogan different wasn't just his size, or his voice, or even his iconic look. It was his ability to make you believe that good could triumph. That heroes were real. That one man could lift an entire industry on his shoulders and still have room to carry more. Yes, there were controversies. Yes, there were moments that reminded us that even icons are human. But that's part of what made his story so powerful. Because behind the muscles and the bravado was a man who, at his core, just wanted to entertain. To connect. To leave a mark, and he did. Hogan inspired not just a generation of wrestlers, but generations of fans. Kids who grew up on his promos became the very superstars now main eventing WrestleMania. He taught them how to hold a mic. How to look into the camera. How to own the moment. Even when the lights were brightest, Hogan never flinched. He leaned in. He thrived. When Hulk Hogan said, "Whatcha gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" it wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a promise. That if you stood up, believed in yourself, and fought hard enough, nothing could stop you. And now, as the wrestling world mourns, that promise feels heavier than ever. But it also feels eternal. Because legends, true legends, don't fade. They evolve into memory, into myth, into the very DNA of the sport they helped build. Roman Reigns may be the tribal chief. Triple H may be the game. But Hulk Hogan? He was, and always will be, the immortal one. Let us know who you'd like us to honor next. And if you grew up on Hulkamania, if you ever threw a leg drop on a sibling, or tore a t-shirt pretending you were the champ, today, we mourn together. Rest in power, Hulk Hogan, gone from the ring, never from our hearts. As tributes continue to pour in from every corner of the wrestling universe, it's clear this isn't just about the end of a man's life, it's about the closing of an era. News anchors are pausing between segments. Talk shows are dedicating moments of silence. Sports outlets that rarely covered wrestling are now revisiting Hulk Hogan's influence on television, advertising, and even global culture. Because Hulk Hogan wasn't just a wrestler, he was a symbol. A symbol of a time when wrestling wasn't just about titles or heel turns, but about hope. About heroes. About something larger than life. Even AEW stars, typically separated by brand loyalty and corporate boundaries, took to social media to acknowledge Hogan's contribution to the sport. Chris Jericho posted, "Before we were rivals, we were fans. Hulk made it cool. Hulk made it loud. Rest easy, big brother." Sting wrote simply, "The immortal now walks with legends. Thank you for the inspiration." And Cody Rhodes, current face of a new generation, admitted, "Every single promo I cut is a reflection of something I saw in Hogan as a kid." But it wasn't just the stars or the companies. The fans, oh, the fans. From Boston to Berlin, people gathered in WWE merchandise, wearing torn red shirts, headbands, and replica championship belts. Some wept openly. Others held up signs, "Thank you, Hulk. Forever immortal. Whatcha gonna do without you?" At Madison Square Garden, an impromptu gathering formed outside. Fans lit candles near the entrance, and a booming voice over a speaker softly played his theme song. People didn't leave. They stood. They remembered. And for a few hours, they were all part of something again. Just like the old days in Tampa, Florida, where Hogan lived in recent years, local businesses put out signs in his memory. Gyms played his greatest matches on TVs, high school football players taped HH to their cleats. At Hogan's Beach Shop, the iconic tourist landmark, a crowd gathered, not to buy memorabilia, but to lay flowers and share stories. Some talked about the first time they saw him on TV. Others recounted the time they met him, how he signed every autograph, smiled for every photo, and said brother like he meant it. And in the midst of all this mourning, the WWE officially announced that the next Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown would be dedicated entirely to the life and legacy of Hulk Hogan. Special matches, tribute videos, personal stories from legends. The main event? A 10-bell salute in front of a sold-out crowd, followed by a replay of his WrestleMania 6 match against the Ultimate Warrior. A match that, even in defeat, showed the world Hogan's true greatness, the ability to elevate not just himself, but those around him. Stephanie McMahon, in a rare public statement, said, "He was our family's greatest champion. He carried WWE before it had the letters. He brought it into homes, into hearts, and into history books." Vince McMahon, no longer the public face he once was, issued a short but heavy comment: "He was larger than life. Larger than words." And perhaps no moment captured the weight of Hogan's loss more than the one shared between Roman Reigns and Triple H backstage, in a candid photo posted by WWE's official account. No captions. Just two men, one sitting, one standing, in silence. Roman's eyes closed. Triple H's hand on his shoulder. A moment that said everything, because even for giants, even for warriors, even for those who seem untouchable, grief is real. And for men like Triple H and Roman Reigns, Hogan wasn't just a pioneer, he was the reason. The reason they picked up the mic. The reason they stepped into the ring. The reason they believed that one person could change the course of history. As the industry now prepares for what's sure to be the most emotional Hall of Fame induction ceremony ever held. Posthumously honoring Hogan once more, fans can't help but reflect on the moments that defined him. The matches were unforgettable. But it was the man, the myth, the immortal, that stayed with them when he raised a child's hand in the ring. When he returned from injury to deafening roars. When he stood tall against insurmountable odds, arms flexed, mustache curled, defying age, gravity, and at times, even reason. He made you believe in something more. And now, as the WWE Universe says goodbye, there's a final question that echoes louder than any entrance theme, louder than any woo, louder than any crowd chant. Whatcha gonna do? When the legend becomes memory, you remember, you honor, you carry forward. The immortal one may no longer walk into arenas with music blaring and fans chanting his name. But every time a kid picks up a toy title belt, every time someone drops a leg on a mattress in their living room, every time a superstar steps out and commands a crowd with nothing but presence. That's Hogan. That's his legacy, and legacies like that? They don't fade. They evolve. Hogan taught us that the ring was more than ropes and mat. It was a stage for belief. A canvas for dreams. A battlefield where good and evil collided, not just for titles, but for something deeper. And in doing so, he didn't just entertain us, he empowered us. So as the lights dim and the 10 bells ring, as the crowd falls into solemn silence, And as that familiar voice from the past whispers through the speakers, "Let me tell you something, brother," we remember the laughter, the triumphs, the thunderous ovations, and the tears, because Hulk Hogan didn't just live for wrestling. He lived for us, forever immortal, forever remembered, forever Hulkamania. The days following Hulk Hogan's passing felt surreal. Not just for the wrestling industry, but for anyone who ever believed in heroes. In schools, kids too young to have seen Hogan in his prime still whispered his name in the hallways. Teachers shared stories of watching him on grainy TVs in the 80s, back when wrestling was less about scripts and more about spirit. Parents revisited their childhoods, dusting off old VHS tapes or showing their own children grainy footage of the man who made them believe anything was possible. And in barbershops, gyms, comic book stores, places where pop culture and passion collide, conversations shifted. They weren't about titles or rankings or rivalries anymore. They were about memories, the kind you never forget. A young man in Texas went viral on TikTok after sharing a video of his late father wearing a Hulk Hogan costume every Halloween, right up until the year he passed. In the caption, he wrote, "Now they're both gone. But I'll never stop believing in the man who taught my dad to believe in himself." In Japan, where Hogan wrestled some of his earliest matches and was treated like a demigod long before he became a household name in the West, fans gathered outside Tokyo Dome. With posters, photos, and folded letters in both English and Japanese, they honored the man they called Ichiban, number one. In the rain, they stood quiet, proud. At the WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, a shrine was quietly assembled inside the main atrium. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. A single robe, a pair of sunglasses, a torn red and yellow shirt inside a glass case. And beside it, a monitor looped one of Hogan's earliest promos, grainy, electric, raw with charisma. Employees, from interns to board members, took time to stand in front of it, some in awe, others in tears. Even those who had worked with Hogan behind the scenes, makeup artists, ring crew, truck drivers, began sharing their stories. One longtime stagehand recounted a time Hogan arrived 3 hours early to an event just to greet the crew. "He shook every hand, called me brother even though he didn't know my name. And he thanked me. That's who he was off camera. That's the Hogan I'll remember." But perhaps the most emotional tribute came from someone who had never shared the ring with Hogan, yet was undeniably shaped by him. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In a black and white video uploaded to Instagram, The Rock sat in silence before speaking. "I was 8 years old. I watched you slam Andre. And that day, I knew. I didn't just want to be a wrestler. I wanted to be what you were. A hero. A beacon. The guy who made people believe." He paused, his voice cracking. "I called you when I got my first movie role. You didn't have to pick up. But you did. And you told me, brother, just keep being electric. The world needs that." And then, quietly, he ended with a single word: "Thanks." In the wake of that tribute, #ThankYouHogan began trending globally. Not just on wrestling Twitter, but across the entire digital spectrum. Movie stars, athletes, influencers, all weighed in. Because Hulk Hogan had become something more than a wrestler. He was a symbol of resilience, of charisma, of American pop culture itself. His voice was unmistakable. That deep, raspy tone that could rally a stadium or quiet a crowd. His promos weren't just entertaining, they were motivational speeches in disguise. He didn't read lines. He delivered messages. From the heart. From the gut. And perhaps that's why his loss hit so hard. Because for millions, Hogan was their first exposure to passion. To power. To perseverance. In nursing homes across Florida and the Carolinas, elderly wrestling fans wore their old Hulkamania shirts in his honor. Some hadn't spoken for weeks. But on that day, nurses swore they heard whispers of "Whatcha gonna do," from lips too old to chant, but too proud to forget. Even rival companies, often known for guarding their own branding, stepped back and paid respect. Impact Wrestling aired a 2-minute tribute reel. AEW paused for a moment of silence during Dynamite. NJPW projected Hogan's silhouette on the entrance ramp. No words. Just the image. Just the legend. But grief, as it always does, gave way to reflection, and reflection led to celebration. WWE made the announcement on a Monday morning. WrestleMania 41 would open with a full-scale tribute to Hulk Hogan. The decision came from the top, Triple H himself. Not as an executive, but as a fan. As someone who had once stood in the back of the arena, wide-eyed, watching Hogan command 80,000 people with nothing but presence, in a rare behind-the-scenes interview, Triple H revealed something most fans never knew. That on the night of his first WrestleMania main event, Hogan had pulled him aside and said, "You're the guy now, brother. Just don't forget what it means to hold the people in your hand. That's the power. Protect it." He never forgot, and neither did Roman Reigns. As the build to WrestleMania continued, Roman was asked about Hogan during a press conference. He paused before answering. "There's no tribal chief without the immortal one. There's no dominance without charisma. No control without connection. Hogan showed us how to lead. Not just in the ring, but in people's hearts." It was more than respect. It was acknowledgement. Of lineage. Of legacy. And on the night of WrestleMania, as fireworks exploded and fans from around the world filled the stadium, the screens dimmed. A hush fell. And then it began, not with a match, not with pyro, but with a single voice. "Let me tell you something, brother." A 10-minute tribute video, narrated by some of the greatest voices in wrestling: Undertaker, Stone Cold, Cena, The Rock, Charlotte Flair, played on screens the size of buildings. Clips from his early days in the AWA. That iconic slam on Andre. The pose-offs. The mic drops. The crowd roars. His return at WrestleMania X8. His Hall of Fame induction. The good. The flawed. The entire journey. And when it ended, the crowd didn't erupt. They stood in silence until slowly, organically, from the cheap seats to the front row, a chant began: "Hogan! Hogan! Hogan!" The ring, empty. The ramp, bathed in red and yellow light. The Titantron displaying just 4 words: "Forever immortal. Hulk Hogan." And in that moment, time folded in on itself. Kids became adults. Adults became kids again. And for one breathless minute, the world wasn't about chaos or division or headlines. It was about a man. A myth. A memory. A hero, because that's what Hulk Hogan gave the world. Not just entertainment. Not just spectacle. But belief. In goodness. In greatness. In yourself. As the night went on and matches unfolded, every superstar who stepped into the ring wore a patch on their gear. A small yellow H inside a red circle. No sponsors. No names. Just a symbol, because that's what he was. A symbol of something timeless. Later that week, Hogan's family held a private ceremony in Clearwater, Florida. Just family. Close friends. And a few select legends who had walked the path beside him. Ric Flair. Jimmy Hart. Sergeant Slaughter. Even Bret Hart, once a rival, came to pay his respects. There were tears. There was laughter. And there were stories. One story shared by his daughter Brooke echoed across the internet: "When I was 5, I asked my dad why he flexed his muscles so much. And he said, because sometimes the world's a scary place, baby. And people need to see that someone's strong enough to face it." I didn't understand then. But I do now. Outside the venue, fans lined the streets. Quietly. Respectfully. Some held signs. Others just held each other. No shouting. No pushing. Just reverence. And when the hearse passed, draped in a red and yellow banner, no one clapped. They saluted, because sometimes, silence is the loudest tribute of all. And as the sun set over the Gulf Coast, casting golden light across the water, one could almost hear it, that iconic voice, that familiar tone. One last time: "Whatcha gonna do, brother, when the memory of Hulkamania runs wild on you?" that question, echoing like a whisper through the winds of time, no longer felt like a catchphrase. It felt like a challenge. A reminder. A call to action for every soul who had ever drawn strength from the sight of a man flexing his arms in the middle of a ring, eyes lit with fire, heart brimming with purpose. In the days that followed the private ceremony, tributes evolved from mourning into movement. Across the world, people weren't just remembering Hogan, they were channeling him. Gym memberships saw a spike. People shared throwback photos of their Hogan poses. Parents taught their kids what "say your prayers and eat your vitamins" meant. Social media transformed into a museum of nostalgia. Clips. Quotes. Childhood memories poured into the digital universe like a flood of warmth, and pain. ESPN ran a week-long special on Hogan's impact on sports media, noting how he redefined what it meant to be an athlete in entertainment. Not just a performer, but a brand. A movement. A figure who drew millions not because of technical wrestling precision, but because he radiated belief. A belief that the hero could win. That the world could be simple again, if just for one match. CNN ran a Sunday segment titled Hulk Hogan, the man behind the mustache. And for once, the world wasn't trying to tear down the man. It was trying to understand him. The layers. The complications. The contradictions. The times he stumbled. The times he soared. The moments when he failed to live up to the myth, and the moments when he transcended it, because that's the truth about legends, they're never perfect, but they are necessary, and Hulk Hogan was necessary. He was necessary when the country needed a hero who didn't wear a cape but a bandana. He was necessary when a generation of children needed someone larger than life to look up to, not on the battlefield or in politics, but in a ring, under the spotlight, roaring with charisma and courage. And even now, especially now, he is necessary because the idea of Hulk Hogan, the essence of what he stood for, is something the world clings to. That unshakable belief in comebacks. In redemption. In pride. In color. In fire. In a world gripped by cynicism, Hogan was sincerity. He pointed into the camera and told you that you mattered. That you could rise. That the odds didn't define you, the fight did. And as people continued to reflect on his life, one phrase began to rise louder than the rest: he was there. He was there for the kids with posters in the ADS. He was there for the fans who cried when he lost to the Ultimate Warrior, but still stood and clapped. He was there during 9/11, when America needed familiar faces. He was there for Make-A-Wish kids who just wanted to touch the hand of their hero. He was there when John Cena rose, when The Rock emerged, when Roman Reigns conquered, offering nods, smiles, sometimes a symbolic hand raised in passing. He was always there. So now, in his absence, the world finds itself asking, who's there for him? The answer came swiftly. The WWE Foundation launched the Immortal Fund, a charity aimed at supporting retired wrestlers battling medical issues, financial instability, and mental health struggles. Named in Hogan's honor, it was backed immediately by Triple H, Roman Reigns, John Cena, and even Stone Cold Steve Austin. The opening donation? A cool $5 million, made anonymously, but fans were quick to speculate who stood behind it. It didn't matter. Because Hogan's legacy was now feeding others, just like he always did. Schools across the US began Hero Days, where kids could come dressed as anyone they admired. In the first week, more than half showed up in red and yellow. In Atlanta, a mural was painted across the side of an old warehouse where Hogan once wrestled early matches. It wasn't just him in his prime, flexing under the spotlight, it was him in his final years. Older. Wiser. Still standing strong. With a hand on the shoulder of a child wearing a Hulkamania shirt, looking up in awe, the words below the mural: legends don't age. They evolve. In the weeks leading up to what would have been his 72nd birthday, WWE announced a Night of Immortals, a global broadcast unlike anything they'd done before. No matches. No promos. Just stories. From fans. From wrestlers. From family. A celebration, not of victory, but of voice. And at the close of the broadcast, one final segment aired. It wasn't polished.